Hello and welcome to this tutorial. My name is Jan Urschel and I'm a concept designer and creative director working in the movie and video game industry. I've worked on such titles as Captain Marvel, Ghost in the Shell, Rogue One and many more. In this tutorial I'm going to share my 3D environment design for production workflow. First of all, I'm going to go over what it means to work in a production pipeline and how it's going to influence our decision making. Then I'm going to move on to doing some 3D layout sketches, composition sketches directly in Blender using some of the brand new tools in Blender 2.83. We're then going to go on to fully fleshing out our scene in Blender using its advanced real-time tools, asset libraries such as Quixel Megascans and others. We're going to finish the scene in Photoshop and Lightroom for final presentation. Let's get started. Before we get into the actual making of the images, I wanted to just share some thoughts on what the title means, what we have to focus on when we do stuff for production. Most of the tutorials I usually have, I approach it in a way that we're learning. We are not under any time constraints. We can kind of do whatever we like and how fast we like it, with the focus on producing quality artwork regardless of production constraints. But of course, if you want to be a professional, if you want to get into the industry, or if you already are, then working in production is something very, very important. And what that means is that our focus is slightly different from purely learning and doing things in our own time. So when it says production, that means we are like in a production pipeline. Other people depend on us. We have deadlines, very tight deadlines. We usually have to produce a daily output of work that shows enough progress to move things forward, and work can be handed off to other people, whether it's 2D, 3D, sketches, final images, inspirational stuff, assets, all sorts of stuff. So when we talk about working with production pipelines, there's usually a few questions that you should ask yourself. Let me divide these into 3 areas. I'm gonna scribble a bit here. I hope you can read it. My handwriting is not the best. So let's see. We should focus on the what, the when, and the how. So what as in, what are we going to do? What are the deliverables? What do we have to hand in at the end? What do we have to hand in at the end of the day? What do we have? What is the final output? How much time? What? Basically what we have to hand in. The how, the when comes here. So let's focus on it one by one. We have to focus on the deliverables. We have to focus on what's essential. Like, what do we really have to get done? Based on the shot, based on the assignment, the brief, whatever we're getting tasked to do, based on that, what do we really have to do? Like, what are we getting paid for, right? What am I getting paid for? So is it, I told you my handwriting's bad. So what am I getting paid for? And also, what am I not getting paid for, right? So you have to really drill down what it is that the client forks the money out. Is it for building assets? Is it for building is it for building for shot design, basically, for the mood, for color, for character design, and what else, and whatever else there is. So I just want to like underline this, right? So you have to really figure out, like, is it like, am I getting paid for example, the shot design? Then does it make sense to spend a lot of time on making like really cool looking trees from scratch? Does it make sense to do a lot of custom stuff? Does it, if I get paid for environment design, does it make a lot of sense to spend hours and hours to draw characters? So you have to ask yourself these questions. If you're getting paid for character design, does it make sense to spend a lot of time on drawing a nice environment around it, right? Well, maybe it does make sense to present the character in a nice environment, but of course you have to spend relatively less time, proportionate amount of less time on the environment of it, so you focus on the right things. And then, of course, with the what comes also a when. Like, what is the time frame that you have? And that's something you should clarify with the client at the beginning always. And you should make it not only clear how much time you have for the entire project, but also he will expect you to break down how much time, what you get done in a day, basically. A day is usually an 8-hour day, and you should very much stick to that. Sometimes it will be more, sometimes it will be less, but you should always assume that it's an 8-hour day, 5-day week work. Work week, sorry. And that needs to be communicated well. Not that, in case you don't clarify that, then he will have his own expectations, and you know what you can get done in a day or not. So you need to agree on that before, and you need to tell the client confidently that that's what you can get done. So you need to then break down, when you know the time frame, when you know the thing, you know exactly like how much time can I allocate for research. How much time can you use for sketches, right? Ideation. How much time do you have for polish? For refinement. So you need to figure out all of this, right? And you need to get a good handle on it. And it's not always a good idea to figure these out while you're on a project. It's something you need to have at least somewhat of an idea of what you can deliver and what time frame. And often it's not that the client will not be understanding if some things take you a bit longer, because every artist is a bit different. So it's hard to put like fixed amount of time frames on anything. But you need to have somewhat of an idea of what you can deliver, and that you need to train yourself to be able to deliver stuff. You can't take like 3 days to do like 2 sketches. That's not how it works. You should always be able to do a couple of sketches a day. And then a refinement of an image can take anywhere from 2 to 3 days to 2 weeks, depending on what's really required. If it's just like exploration, then it will be faster. If it's like final illustration, then of course it will take longer. So also you need to, so these are the kind of things that you kind of partially need to communicate with your client, the deliverables and everything, and these kind of the things that you think about yourself. The time frame needs to also be discussed properly with the client. When it comes to the how, that's more something that you have to mostly figure out by yourself. Of course, the how will be beneficial to the client in a sense that, okay, you're doing like 3D assets or stuff that you can hand to the client, or maybe the client wants to have your PSD files, which is totally fine, I think, because usually the work gets changed later on anyway. We're just one small part in the production pipeline. We don't produce usually final artwork. So it's understood usually that you hand off your assets and they kind of hand it off to the asset guys or environment guys to produce more final stuff. So the how kind of feeds a bit into the deliverables, but also it needs to something that you need to clarify for yourself. So some things, at least with 3D, I ask myself a lot of things like, okay, what is my day rate, and how does it relate to the amount of stuff that I need to get done? Can I afford to spend a certain amount of that on custom assets? So I think about like if I get paid X amount per day, let's say I get paid, let's say $600 a day. And if I spend $50 on some nice models of, I don't know, tree or rock or whatever, how much will that accelerate my workflow? How much time will it save me that it makes it worth it? So let's say if you can like spend like, for example, 10% of your day rate on custom assets that will accelerate your workflow by, I don't know, 50%, then maybe that's worth it. If you spend like 50% of your day rate on assets, then maybe that's not such a good idea. So how can, like, let's say kit bash parts or plugins or whatever, how can they help me solve maybe secondary problems? So I would call it maybe secondary because I would not recommend you to use kit bash parts to solve your main design issues. If you work as a concept designer, then you will most likely be paid for some sort of idea, some sort of design that you're supposed to design. So if you do I don't know, if you do some sort of building, if you do like a character or whatever, it's not recommend. I wouldn't recommend solving everything through kit bash parts, at least not in the initial stages. That's why I'm calling this secondary. So the primary thing, the primary design, is something you should really figure out by yourself, and that's what you're getting paid for, right? That comes back to the essentials. And what am I getting paid for? Which is the design, which is the ideas, right? And I would always solve secondary problems with like kit bashing plugins. So in this case, it's like, okay, the setting is maybe a forest or whatever. How can I solve the like having realistic trees, having realistic grass or rocks or whatever? I can solve those issues with kit bashing because I'm not directly getting paid for figuring out tree design and that kind of stuff. Of course, there could be a brief that, oh, let's now design some really cool looking trees. And then that becomes the primary objective of the task you're given. But that is something completely different than what we're trying to do here. So that needs to be understood, right? So once the primary issue changes, you need to, of course, change that, right? So then the primary issue is the tree design, then the secondary becomes like maybe the leaves or whatever. So you can look for nice leaf pictures and build yourself stuff like that, or like bark, right? The bark displacement. People will probably not expect you to make nice displacement maps for barks or whatever as a design task because somebody else does that. But so you can rely again on kit bash textures or whatever plugins to solve that secondary issue. Yeah, in the end, it comes down to efficiency. In the end, comes down to efficiency. Like how much time? Like I want to spend as much time as possible on design of the object. All of these kind of things are supposed to save me time to then focus on the main primary task. So that's a rough breakdown of what I understand working for production to be, the underlying ideas. And I hope this is helpful for you to understand how how your mindset might have to change when you work for clients in a production pipeline. I want to introduce little exercises into my tutorials. So as the first part here, I want you to think about maybe coming up with a client brief. You can also follow along the one I'm using here. Make up a task for yourself and figure out what the primary and secondary tasks within that larger exercise are, and allocate your resources according to that. And of course, you should also set yourself a timeline to complete these tasks, for the smaller ones and for the complete all over one. And in order to push yourself, I think you should make this timeline slightly faster than what you currently are able to do. So if you know you can pump out a really good image in 3 days, maybe try to push yourself and do it in 2.5 days. It should really, the feeling you get should be like, okay, like it should give you the idea of like it's slightly uncomfortable, like not like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to finish that. That's a bit too harsh, I think. It should be just like, oh, this is going to be tight. I'm not 100% confident I can make this, but I'll try. That should be the feeling I think you should get out of this. So yeah, I hope this maybe is a helpful exercise for you to do while you're following along this tutorial. And there will be more exercises going forward in the next chapters here. Now we are in Blender, and we want to create some nice little layouts, sketches, although it's hard to talk of sketches when you're using straight up a 3D program. You can see here is the standard Blender. I'm using 2.83. I always have in my start file a ground plane, character for scale, and I have a sunlight here as well, but that's not necessarily what we need. It's just so that I have everything set up right away and I don't need to do this all the time. You can, for example, drop in, like make a new cube. You see that if you add a new cube, by default the size is 2 by 2 meter, which makes this character about 6 feet tall, 1.8 meter. Make sure we have the right scale. Once you have changed the scene, you can actually say File, Default, Save Startup File, and the next time you open Blender, this big cube will be here as well. But for now, I have like the 1 meter cube here and a character, a plane, and some other little things here and there. But basically, I want to create some possible frames for that I can present at the end of the day, sketches or like compositions, whatever you want to call it. And the focus should be on creating some kind of like interesting lighting. And one way how you can really, create sketches and compositions and framings that focus a lot on the light is by using a new feature in 2.83. And it's actually a pass within Eevee. It's a new feature that wasn't there before in 2.82. Some people got around it by playing with creating like a sketch shader or something, but it's a bit difficult to work with that because Eevee is lacking like an override material setting that just allows you to apply this to all objects right away and for any new object. So that makes it a bit cumbersome because that override feature only exists in cycles, but the sketch shader is not so easy to replicate in cycles. So long story short, with 2.83 we have a new option here. So we'll go into Eevee by clicking up here. So now we have that, And now what we can do is you click here and then you have this render pass here. Right now it's on combined, and you have lots of different kind of things here. You have something very cool called mist. So you can create like a Z depth pass. When you go to the view layer properties and you have mist enabled, then you can go to the world settings and then you have a new mist pass control, and then you can adjust exactly what the range of that mist is supposed to be, which is very cool. We'll need that later for the when we're compositing everything together in Photoshop. But now I want to focus on the pass called, shadow. And if you enable that, you get this very nice black and white pass, and it's only really focusing on the light and the shadow. That's why I have my sun in here. So if you delete this, it will disappear, of course. So let's do Shift A, light sun. Now it's coming from the top. We can just move it here, and then once we change the angle, we can see something is happening. So let's maybe add another one. You can see, make it bigger. And now we can create an interesting kind of landscape. So we can have like a backdrop here. If you want to have maybe something like, let's look at it this way. If we look through our camera, press 0. My camera is here, I think. Yeah, it's here. So my camera is here. If you want to create some kind of shot, then we can't really see anything here. Now we have the character and shadow. Now it reads against the backdrop. But let's say we want to have the character and light, but we want to have the background and shadow. We need to build ourselves like a shadow, like an object that casts a shadow, basically. So noting where my sun direction is, comes like from here. I need to create some element here that is outside of the camera, but it blocks the sun out. So now my character is readable again. If you want to get a bit more quality out of this, because it's quite rough here, you can go to the render properties, go to shadows, and set these settings a bit higher. So for the cascade size, we can go to 4000 pixels, which will create a better, just a more detailed shadow. You might also want to get rid of soft shadows, since we are looking for something very graphic here. You see how it creates a soft shadow, which is great when we're going into like final render. But for now, I think we just want to have something really hard edged. And if you look at it, it creates like this little outline on these objects. There's, I think, nothing you can do about that, but it helps when you have like light, when you're looking directly in the sun, when you have like a backlit, that you can still read the character, which is quite useful actually. Or if you have like another object here. So you still have that outline here, and you can read where the objects are. Can be quite useful in any case. So we want to create some kind of little landscape. In the beginning, I don't necessarily want to start kit bashing right away. I think I want to just get a rough idea of the layout I want to create. I know it's supposed to be a night, but I have this generic character in here. I purchased this one. I have a YouTube video up where you can see where I get my resources from, just in case some of you are wondering. So let me see what the camera says. I have a very useful add-on installed. It's called the Photographer add-on, and I highly recommend to get this. it kind of creates a lot of useful camera features in here, right in the toolbar, which you can activate or deactivate with N. Basically, it doesn't really add anything completely new, but it brings all the camera related infos up here, and you do not always have to like select the camera and then go down here and then do all your settings here. You don't have to do that. You have everything always here, which makes it really easy to work with multiple cameras as well. So let's say I have a camera and I want to duplicate it with Shift D, and now I have actually both cameras here, and I can jump back and forth. Of course, they're both at the same. They both have the same settings right now, but if I move this camera and if I go here, I can go back and forth really quickly. It used to be free, I think, the plugin. Now I think it's like $5, but it's really $5 really well spent. You have like everything here, right? You have your focal length, your aperture, you can set your depth of field, you can set your focal points. You have a lot of different settings here, which is really great. You can also say add camera and lots of cool little things. I haven't even worked out everything because there's a lot of things in here. But if you work a lot with shots with cameras like I do, then this will be a really, really useful add-on. It's just called Photographer. It's fantastic. So I have that here. I think for the shot I want to create, I mean, I usually do multiples, but for the main shot, I think I want to have like a more like a standard focal length, which is like either like 35 or 50. So I kind of want to create my layout according to that. And I want to kind of create like a fairly standard, I think, a shot of like a character here with a character on a piece in the forest with like some trees around and some sort of entrance of our building here. And the focus should really be on the arrival of the character. So I want to have like I want to emphasize the mood and everything, the mood of the scene, with like some dappled light through the leaves and the building very mysteriously cast in a lot of shadow with only a certain aspect of it highlighted. I think it's a very standard shot these days, but I think we can really play with the mood and get a lot of cool stuff going. So you can see this shadow mode here really makes the sculpting with light very easy, very comfortable to work with, and we can really focus on getting a nice mood going without having distractions of all the other things. So we can really focus on a very strong graphical layout. So if you go out of our camera, I just want to put some few pieces in place. So I know I want to have like a foreground shadow which can emphasize the darkness of the forest, and where I can play a bit with the lighting. And in the back towards the back, I want to have like the whatever it's going to be, right? Like some kind of castle, fortress, or just like more like a mysterious temple kind of thing. So I wanna just get some stuff like the scale and main ideas out. I'm probably gonna have like some trees and some other kind of markers along the way, so that it helps me to emphasize the depth. If I have multiple repeating elements of roughly the same size that are receding in the distance, I can more easily give people an idea of the depth of it. So if you have like a couple of these, of course now it's harder to see because these are actually in the dark, but if you see, we have these and then we push them further in the distance, it creates like a visual guide for us to look at. But that's only like a guide for now. So of course I don't want to have like this to be super dark here. We need to create like an opening, something like that, right? And we have to have our character, we want our character to be readable, right? So either we have the character dark on light, like the character is still in the darkness of the forest against the lighter shade of the wall that is in sunlight, or we do it the opposite way. We have the character in the light, and sorry, I need to switch again. And we have the castle in darkness. These two aspects actually can have a strong storytelling impacts actually. Purely by making the character darker, you can make him more mysterious, or her more mysterious, or you can actually make him the bad guy, so to speak. You can conversely, having the building more in the darkness, you can make the building more mysterious or evil or whatever other connotation you want to give it, whereas the character can be more like pure or just shed him in a more positive light. But of course also it has to go hand in hand with the character himself, who can be more clad in white clothing to make him look more positive, or in dark clothing. And then you think about it, it would of course be weird if you have like a dark evil character with like a shining like dark armor and horns or whatever, and he stands in the sunlight. That would be kind of weird. So these things need to go hand in hand, right? But these things can be thought about while you're actually playing with the light, creating these kind of layouts, right? The idea for whatever scene you're going to build and how you're going to infuse it with some sort of story can already start with the lighting scenario you're doing. Whoops. So we have this one for now. I need a bit more information since it's a bit too basic, of course. So I have these pointers here. Maybe I want to add a little bit of geometry into the plane that I have here. I'm adding some loop cuts here with Control R and then the scroll wheel. Maybe make this a bit. I want to kind of create like a path here. Some more loop cuts, so I can just take this and like push it down a little bit to create kind of like a path. It's gonna be like a more organically grown forest path with like some stones here and there that maybe are like long forgotten. Add some more cuts here. I want to. Maybe what else can we do? We can take this and can move it a bit up. So we have this place that we're going to slightly elevate it. Maybe I want to, let me see. Like this, so I can have a steeper incline. Oh, I have to deselect this one. Okay. Just to create a little bit of interest, maybe you want to push these around a little bit. Can use the proportional editing to affect not only the polygon I'm selecting, but to affect a larger area around it, to have a bit more like smooth flow. You can, with a scroll wheel, change the influence level here. A lot of these basic Blender functions I have covered in a new YouTube tutorial where I go over the Blender basics. It should already be out by the time I'm uploading this, or if not, then shortly after. So I want my character to maybe stand in the path. And these things can follow. Maybe they're like a bit large because they're like 3 meters high. Maybe I want them to be a bit smaller. But yeah, there's also supposed to like simulate like trees, but I'm only like really worried about the overall layout right now. So let's create something more interesting here. I also want to have an entrance kind of as the focal point within the temple, because for the shot I want to do, we're really only going to focus on the entrance of the temple. We're not going to see the entire thing. So that should be our focus. One thing I wanted to try is that I mean, we have to imagine here in the foreground there's going to be like dappled light from the trees, which there's an interesting way to simulate that later. But it's not necessarily useful for at this point. So you see here now we have, this is actually quite nice. Maybe we want to have the light come in like this, or we want to have the light come in like, you can see now how we have a very basic setup, but just changing the direction of the sun, we can create very quickly new layouts. And if we add, like this looks like a staircase now, even though I didn't even model a staircase or something. So this could be like a walk up to the place I want to go to. So that's an interesting feature. So let's see what else we can do. Maybe I want to have, I want to make like an entrance here. Can just add a couple of, oh no, I don't want that. It should be, I don't want it to be like massive. I don't want it to be like a insane kind of massive temple. I want it to be like not like a backdoor, but something that feels a bit more mysterious. So it should just be, it shouldn't be that much. It should be just like a regular kind of door, maybe a bit larger. So I want to make sure that I'm hitting that, and I need my character for scale. Standing here, so okay. How big is that? Okay, that looks like a comfortable kind of entrance for that person, maybe a bit smaller. Not too big, not too large, so I can just kind of create that. Probably want to push it further a bit so it's completely in darkness. Of course, take away the proportional editing. So now it's like, it doesn't matter how deep it is, but it creates a nice contrast. So I have that person here. maybe she's going inside, just finishing her call, because inside the temple there's shitty reception. We can see how we can very quickly create very nice, interesting and strong layouts purely with light and dark. The overall composition is quite interesting, but I'm not too sure if the angle of the light is the nicest. I mean, since we are talking about production, there's always going to be the need for multiple ideas, and these ideas should be different enough from each other, at least in the early stages, that the art director or production designer has something to choose from, and not just like 3 very similar looking ideas. At the same time, they of course need to fulfill all the same brief. They can't be completely different things. If it's like mysterious temple, then you have to think about 3 different kinds of mysterious temples, based of course on the reference you collected. So we can try to play around. If you want to try to play around with the sun, we also need to shift our light blockers here a bit. So if you move it like that, I think it will be okay. Maybe we want to have it even a bit tighter focus. Press 0 again, so we didn't hear. Yeah, maybe we want to have I want to shift these 2 a bit further. So that I get the nice contrast here of the, let me make her face the building. I don't know if I'm going to have another character standing here. Maybe there's going to be like a progression of like, first the characters is here, it's like approaching, and then he's gonna, or she's gonna move towards it. So now I have like these markers here, which kind of help me to kind of focus towards our focal point here, which will be the opening the doorway. Of course, also do something like that. Stand here. Kind of just trying to figure out how this shot could look best. I think this one's pretty good. And you can imagine I have like big trees around here. It's like slight adjustments here and there. As a basic block out, this can already almost work. I probably want to add some, make this thing feel slightly more interesting than just a block of stuff. A temple always needs to have like some kind of columns. There you go. They should I want to have them reach out of the image so that the idea is like there's something bigger. Also, this way of working really forces you to focus on the big relevant pieces of architecture that you have in your scene. And it's not even like architecture. You purely focus on values, on blocky shapes that have actually a major impact on your scene. Because in the end, if you break down an image, it's really just a distribution of dark and light. And this even gives you the opportunity to just focus on the most extreme ends of the spectrum. The white spectrum, the complete white and the complete black. Of course, there's going to be nuances in here. There's going to be a little like light spilling into this. There's going to be shadow spilling into the other one. But this really helps you to focus on what's the essence of this image. If you really distill it down, what is this image about? And I think this exercise really helps you to figure that out. And I think that's pretty interesting already. Maybe I want to emphasize that there's like a staircase. If I somehow can. Let's quickly make an array out of this one. That might already be enough. I just need a hint of it. And then, I don't know, there could be something inside, but I'll worry about this later. So at the very essence, this could be our first sketch. And in the same way, you can build other sketches, more elaborate, more simple, and it's always quick enough to like. This, for example, is also something very interesting, although it might not work as well. But you can see how you can quickly change the composition by just turning the sunlight. And now you have something completely different, super graphical, but this could also work. I think we need to do some blocking here in the foreground to make it darker. Otherwise the read will be a bit confusing. But this could already be the starting point for something else. So if you just take that and let's see what's blocking the light. Yeah, you see if you just extend this to the back, we have the foreground also dark, and I think we have a very interesting new composition. Then we can change some little things here and there that might not work, and make it work again. So as long as it kind of fits into the overall idea of what we're trying to do, we can also do like a different kind of lens to create something very different, right? We can get a better view of what this temple looks like up here. But for now, I want to kind of stick to my layout that I've created here. And I feel like I want to work with this. This could be a tad too, if the art director wants to have like some compositional sketches, maybe this is a bit too basic. You want to maybe add a little bit more detail here and there. But at the essence of it, this could already be a very viable compositional frame. If he then, and you see how quickly we actually set this up, we can easily do 5 or more interesting ones in a workday, and then plus of course research and maybe doing a little bit of a paint over to give us like some textural interesting like stone textures or something. We can easily do that. So now we have this very cool graphical sketch, and we can move on. So this exercise is going to be fairly straightforward. I think for your own practice, you should do at least 3 or maybe 5 or 10 different black and white compositions in 3D, just to get used to it and get used to the workflow. The more, the better. The only thing to note, of course, for your own sake, is that make sure that they are all like on the client brief, right? They should all fulfill the things you set out to do. It shouldn't be too far away from it. You can maybe stretch it a bit here and there, especially if you have made sure that maybe 1 or 2 of them are really spot on. But so you can play around with some of the other ones if you want to. Something more daring, smaller, bigger, crazier, easier. I'm still on the shadow render pass here. I'll change to combined. And you see this is how it looks. That's okay. So I'm gonna develop everything kind of in tandem, because there's not really any need anymore to only stay in blockout mode or unrendered mode or anything. We can design and light and do everything in real time, everything together. That's the beauty of Blender and Eevee, and the beauty of having a lot of kit bash parts and pieces that a lot of them have already ready-made textures and UVs and all that kind of stuff. So we can put this together, I think, fairly quickly. I'll be introducing the pieces, the kit bash parts, the things I use, the plugins I use as we're going through it, so you can see directly what they're useful for. So in the beginning, I want to, let's add an HDRI. I also have the physical atmosphere plugin, which is quite useful, but I'll introduce it another time, because I think for this one the HDRIs worked a bit better. So I want to load in the HDRI. I have it saved here. I went to HDRI Haven to check for a few, and I will see which one works the best in terms of overall lighting scenario. That is a bit strong. Let me see if I have maybe the sun dialed up too much. No, it's fine. Let me see why the sun is so overly blown out. It might just simply be the material. I think that is it, but let's not get confused by that. Let's dial down the strength of the HDRI a bit. Let's add our sun back, because the sun is something we need. And let's start a little bit of work on the materials. We just need some very basic stuff for the main pieces. So I've already clicked on this one and made a new material for this one. I also want to make new, and I call it walls. So I need basically these two for now, because I have one for the ground, one natural, and one for the walls, and the rest will come in through the parts, and I will see what I need. But those are the main ones. So I have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. That's in the preferences add-ons. You can just search for it. Node Wrangler, it's in there. And then I can press Control T, and I get this image texture node setup. I want to add a vector transform node as usual, so that I can connect it from the object to the vector here to set up my very basic box mapping here. I need to load in a texture. I'm just going to use a very basic like grass texture. I'll change this to texture, the mapping, and then I'll play around. I need to always make sure that I select everything, press A to select everything, then press Control A and say apply rotation and scale, just so that we have a common scale here for our box mapping to work. It doesn't really matter what I'm using, how I'm using it, because I'm going to cover up most of this. So I don't have to worry about that. Let me just quickly see how maybe the other HDRIs will give me a better contrast. That's a bit more interesting, I think. That's getting more to what I wanted to do. Okay, let's select this one here, the big wall. And for that, I'm going to use a texture I have purchased. Actually, I shouldn't do this again. This is annoying. So I'll just grab this. Probably want to connect this. Oh, it's a bit too wet. Let's make an invert node. I connect this just to the roughness output, so I can control whether it's reflective or non-reflective. So this one seems to be okay. I want to copy this one. Sometimes it doesn't want. If sometimes you select it and you press Control C, but it doesn't copy it, so you have to go to Node Copy just to do it manually, and then suddenly, magically, it works. So I have some textures I bought and that I know will work well for this one. So I just I'm dragging them in from my other screen. You can also watch my YouTube video on the assets to see exactly where I got this from. So I have the color, specularity, bump and roughness. So I can connect these all here. Sorry, I have to make it a bit smaller so it fits. So I have to change these all to box. It's the base. Give it a second. It's a 4K map. It's a bit big, maybe even too big. Maybe I should have gone with a smaller one. Specularity, roughness, and for the bump channel I need a additional bump node. Plug that into the height and into the normal channel, and now I have like a very rough material. Maybe I want to dial that down. So now it's a very concrete-ish looking material, but I will add a bit of color to it. Let me actually do it like this. You can add a mix node, and then I can set it to maybe, let's say, multiply. You can see how I can now add like a brownish tone to it. Maybe it's a bit too dark. I can also maybe bump up the light a bit. I want to have a good strong contrast. But so I have these two materials. This doesn't look like much right now, but that will change in a bit. We also had at one point have to get rid of this lady here. So what I want to do is you can, the way I show it here is not maybe necessarily like the best way or the only way to do it. You can probably spend some time on designing the main thing, the building first, or you can spend some time on bringing in your assets to design the scene. That is totally, I think, up to you and up to your preference. As long as you end up at the right result, it's really not that, it doesn't matter that much, I think, as long as at the end of the day, when you have to hand in your work, you are at a certain stage. You can either do it either way. Just have to know that you shouldn't noodle around on one side too much, so that maybe in the end you run out of time. There's another good add-on which I would recommend, which is built in. It's the material utilities. So now when you select these multiple objects, you can press Shift Q and you can assign a material to multiple objects. By default in Blender that is not possible. I will replace some of these, so I'm not too concerned right now to do this. I just wanted to show you. Shift Q, assign material, and so that's a lot faster than doing it manually one by one. So we have that. Still doesn't look like much, but you kind of get the idea here. As a next step, I wanted to introduce something a lot of you probably already know, but it's a very good resource for very high quality stuff. And I use it amongst many others for building out scenes, and that is Quixel, the Megascans library. And I will show quickly the main interface here. I'm not going to get into, this is the Quixel bridge. There's another one that's called the Quixel mixer, where you can actually build materials and texture objects. But I will leave that for another tutorial. For now, I just want to have a look at this guy here. It's very straightforward. The Quixel bridge is basically a library of available assets that you can use, and there's tons and tons of stuff. Assets and plants, surfaces, decals. You see, you have lots of stuff here. In order to use it, you need to make an account. So it will ask you to log in or sign up, and then you can use it. You can, for example, they were bought by Epic. So if you can use these things when you use it with Unreal for free, which is pretty cool. So if you're like an Unreal guy, then you have all of these available for free to you. If it's for, I think for like personal, educational and other uses for, I think, commercial purposes, there's a cap on what I think annual revenue can be of your project. in any case, there's lots and lots of cool stuff in here. When you, let's say you really need to, you really want that, that tree stump, or you want, what else is there? You really need that axe. Then you can, it says how much, there's a point system. You can buy a certain amount of points that you can use per month for their subscriptions, and then you can download it, purchase it. And there's a few things to note. So I'll go to my library of things I have purchased. So let's say I want to have, I love all these Japanese little things here. Let's say we want to have this floor piece here. I have purchased it. You have here, for example, the download settings. So you can set your resolution, your material preset, doesn't really matter, and the mesh format, which I would recommend you use FBX. And then you have settings here for LOD. LOD means level of detail. It's a game specific term. And you can see here that it mainly affects the polygon count, the triangle count. So you see LOD5 is very low res, and it's going to look very, it's going to basically look very shitty. You can, in addition, also download the high poly source, but for our purposes, I mean, there is a difference in quality between the high poly source and the LOD0 even. But unless it's like a crazy close-up foreground element, hero, asset kind of thing, you do not need the high poly source, because the high poly source is really high poly, like hundreds of thousands or more triangles. So I would recommend for average use, I think LOD0 or 1 is probably what you can go with. And texture resolution, if it's more in the foreground, then 4K. If it's more middle to background, 2K is totally enough. You can run some comparisons, but that's basically what I found out. I mean, even at LOD0, like once you add lots and lots of stuff because of the high resolution textures, your scene will slow down. So if you feel like the performance is getting out of hand, is really getting down, then you may want to use lower resolution textures. That will help, or even going down the LOD level. So these are the download settings, what it downloads onto your hard drive. And the other side is the export settings, where you can, basically these depend on your download settings. So if you have clicked all of these, if you like clicked all the resolutions, then you have all of these available here. But I didn't do that. I only downloaded a certain specific subset. So I have the 4K texture, the JPEG, the FBX, and the LOD0. This is what is going to push it to, that's what is going to push to Blender. And the good thing is that there's a direct plugin for Blender, which allows us with one click to export these into Blender. And the new plugin works very well. So I already installed it here, of course, but if you just opened Quixel and you just start it, then there will be a path or there will be a button to tell you to install the plugin. And in the new version, I think it's just as simple as clicking on the link, and it will take a short amount of time. And it will download the plugin, and then it's going to give you a path. And that path you put into the preferences you install, and then you give it the path on where it needs to install, where the plugin lies. And then you install it, and you are set. And then really it couldn't be any easier. There's really no need for like a tutorial almost. So you just click export. It says exported successfully. And it's here. You can see it here. You have it up. The textures are all set. Let's change our camera here. And here it is. You can move it around. You can check here, it has like 14,000 triangles, just like the mixer, the bridge said, and now we can play around with it. And I mean, that's it. It's like, yeah, it feels like cheating, to be honest. But it is, like I said, this is for the solution of secondary problems, right? And we should all be glad that these kind of resources now exist and they are so affordable and easy to use. Yes, of course, there will be repetition when all people start using these things again and again. But as always, it depends on what you do with it, and the focus should still be on the shot, on the design you make. That is our primary goal with these images. So it's not making close-ups of assets that you purchased, but it's using these assets and making something cool out of it. So let's see. So we want to make our scene here and populate it with lots of cool assets. And before we go crazy with like however much we can shove in here, it would be good that we, in this case, really make a shot and stick to it and really only build in this shot what we need. So we don't have to build like a full diorama, like a crazy amount of stuff, and populate it to a degree that that it's a fully interactive scene or something. We don't want to focus on that. We want to get this shot and place our objects in a way that makes sense and is efficient, right? Because remember, always we're like on the clock here, and we don't want to lose our focus here in getting this done. So I'm going back to bridge. Let's see what else we can do. Like, I want to have a little path here, so let's import another little piece of the path. Let's give it a short second. I probably need some more foreground elements here. This doesn't really fit together, but I want to make sure that it makes sense, that it's actually visible in this area here. What I want to actually look at is, I want to maybe, what if I'm just using this, I mean, the texture here is layouted and UV'd for this specific object, but we can easily use this for the ground here. And it stretches, it looks awful, of course, when you look at it this way, but it's just going to peek out here and there. And it's not going to be necessarily always like completely visible. We're going to scatter some grass on top of it. So this is going to be barely visible. So it doesn't really matter. We're going back. I want to have like a little stairs here. This is almost a bit on the big side, but let's see. Stairs are always something that a lot of people don't pay attention to the scale. Of course, stairs are very specific to a human size, and they have a specific height and depth that makes humans able to walk up on them comfortably, and you should never ignore that. So a lot of giveaways of bad design is if the stairs are too big or too small, that it would not make sense that people walk up and down. So that's something you should always take note of. Let's adjust this a bit. So that we have this kind of level with our area here. I probably want to make some adjustments here on where this path here is going, so that makes a bit more sense. Probably, yeah, we want to move this here, turn on our like this, so maybe here, move this a bit so that this all works together a bit better. Can turn this. If you want to, we can add another one of these in there. Oh, not like this. Like these in here. I don't know if it's going to make any difference. Forgot if I copied it or not. No, doesn't seem like it. It's a bit lifted up. And you can scale these to a certain degree. Just make sure it's kind of consistent. This looks okay. Then I want to bring in some other pieces that look useful, like this guy looks really useful. Very cool. It's definitely useful for this kind of stuff. If you want to stay in this mode, looking through your camera, but then you see like here, you want to move it on the y-axis, which is currently like going in depth, then you don't have a handle here. It's always good to learn the shortcuts in Blender because they are very useful. So if you want to stay here, you can press G for grab and then press Y to constrain it to the axis you want to move it at. And for finer adjustment, just hold down Shift and now you can move it smaller amounts. You can also let Shift go and it reverts back to faster. So that is really useful in case these handles kind of disappear. I mean, I can just like duplicate them. You can see here that it doesn't look duplicated at all. Not sure if I need another one here. It doesn't look like I duplicated it actually because a lot of it is in shadow and it's kind of hidden. So, but just in case, you can always like scale it up a little bit. You can say object mirror X. Now it's mirrored. In case you just want to, you can tilt it a little bit. Just little minor adjustments so that it doesn't look so repeated. In case you feel like it does. So we have that part. We want to maybe introduce some stones. Let's check here what we have. Like this stuff is cool. I have some other sets. This kind of looks interesting. It's a bit different, but it might help get rid of these like really plain looking areas here to introduce some unevenness. It's quite big, so we need to shrink it down. This one I think is a bit easier to deal with because you can just, I think it's a bit more forgiving if you want to make adjustments. And again, we're not building like something completely final in 3D. We want to build like something we can in the end then paint over. I want to have something like with roots or something with like a forest floor. That looks interesting. Yeah, these guys are good. can be like a bit like here. And you can duplicate them, you can put them somewhere else. Let's give a bit of variety. You don't want to have it too stony. I think I want to bring in some of the rocky stuff. This one is fantastic. All these like tree stumps. They can help us build these kind of like markers here for. You can make them a bit bigger. These depth markers that where I have these guys here. So like I can get rid of these. Look at this guy. I want to have some roots or something. This one is great. For like some foreground element here. Probably want to rotate it a bit. To see how it fits in here. Of course, the roots should be nearby some trees, but that's not an issue because I'm sure we have some more trees somewhere lying around here. And these are all cool. You can, see what you need, purchase depending on your current need. And then you are good to keep these, which is great. We have a couple of these guys, so you can like... I want to mix these in with like some proper trees, like some intact trees. So you can see how we can build out this scene fairly quickly with some cool assets. Of course, there's not an unlimited amount of assets here. These ones we can use for some of the entry point, like we can use this one as a guide for our entry. I mean, Quixel is great, but it's not the only resource, and it's not the only resource you should use. It's always better to use it from multiple sources. Let's make the adjustment so it fits our lady properly. You see, it doesn't quite fit the tone of the stone, so we need to make some adjustments here to find something that works better together. We can also do stuff like desaturate the color path of this texture, and so now it fits a bit better. And you see how we can fairly quickly like piece this thing together. Another thing that is cool is we probably want to add some grass to this scene, and we also want to add some trees and some more pieces here. The trees will probably take up most of the space here. So we don't have to necessarily worry about that too much. Let's add some grass here. Just not necessarily because now it's like the right time to add the grass, but it's good to show you like just another plugin I use. And this one is called Scatter. You have to purchase it, but it's really great. It comes with a couple of different settings for different kinds of grass. And what we need to do in order to prepare for that is we should kind of choose the area that is going to have the grass on it. So it's going to be like probably this visible area here. I'm going to choose these guys here. And I'm simply going to make Shift D, a copy of it, move it slightly. No, what didn't it copy it? Okay. Shift D and then move it slightly down so it's kind of underneath, and then I make like a copy of it. Sorry, not a copy, I separate it out. So now it's a separate object. And it's just living underneath. I could even have it overlapping here, but it's fine. That's how I use it. And I have the scatter plugin installed. It's here now. And first I need to pull up a target, the eyedropper, and I want to use this plane. And it's gonna now scatter the grass that I choose on this plane. And it's very easy. So I go to the biomes manager, which basically brings me to the preference add-on settings. And now I have these here. These come all pre-installed, and I can choose whatever I want. So I can choose, like, let's say the biome AI09, whatever. I click on this here. It's going to take a second, and it has already loaded it. You can't see anything right now. You can't see anything right now. We need to turn these ones on, the little monitors here, to make it visible. Give it a second. And we can say toggle proxies in the whole scene, because these little things are proxies. But it's only going to give us a rough idea, because during render time it's going to look a bit different. And usually it's going to look a lot busier. Now I need to select my plane and make some adjustments, because I think there's just simply too many of these. So you see here it will add a certain number, and that sounds a bit too crazy. So I want to really take these down, because I think it just added way too many. Yeah. I'm going to take it down by a factor of 1,000, by a factor of 10. Yeah, that's way too much. Because even though it doesn't look like much here, it's gonna be a lot. Okay, and then what we can do is simply run a test and see how it looks. So we can see that there's way too many of these little thingies here. What is it? The nettle. I think I want to really dial those down, but we don't really have enough of the other ones. So I'm just gonna amp these up again. Save it, render it again. Should just take a few seconds at this point. So we can see that the grass is poking through here and there. It's not nearly enough. But we can see that it's kind of like coming up here and there, coming up here and there, which is what I want. I don't want to have like too much grass, but I want it to be visible. I want to take the nettle out. I think it doesn't look good. move this up a little bit. Try to render it again. It takes a bit of dialing in, but it's really, with Eevee, it goes really quickly. Yeah, okay, this one looks good. So now we have like the grass like poking through here and there. That is okay. That's kind of what I want. So that is cool. Now let's bring in some bigger trees. I mean, you can kind of imagine how this one will go now that I'm just going to add more and more of these until I reach like a point where, okay, like this makes sense. I want to have a good mixture of like low-lying stuff, bushes, and maybe I want to bring in some stuff like yeah, these guys here. I mean, they're Japanese. Okay, maybe if we're nitpicky, and I know I'm often nitpicking, then of course this doesn't make any sense to bring this stuff in. But basically, what I want to achieve with these is kind of, in addition to the trees, I want to have some other like vertical kind of markers of stuff that can help me create depth. Maybe you want to have another one closer to here. Rotate. That was not what I wanted. Kind of rotating. That we have like, again, distance markers that help us kind of understand the distance better. It's nice that kind of the tip here is kind of like in the light. It kind of helps us with the 3D-ness of it. It always looks nice. You can see here how basically you can design this thing in real time, which is the real benefit of this. You can sculpt and design with light and the objects all at the same time. Let's try to bring in a tree. I'll do that in a second. So I've imported a tree here. Where to get trees? I mean, you can use plugins like the Grove, or you can buy them. There's so many out there. Again, check my YouTube. I have a video on where to get things that I like. So I imported this file here, and the color of the leaves is a bit jarring. It's very coolish. I want to get rid of that. Let me change the color of the leaves to something more a yellowish. It's a bit too cool. And we have to be careful with these things, because they tend to be very heavy in terms of polygon, and they're very they're getting very hard to handle on the machine. So you should always maybe it was a bad idea to do it now, but keep it maybe towards the end if your computer really can't handle it. Especially if I want to use multiple of these. So now we can like move them on, and you can see like we're already getting like nice shadows. So now you can see how we can really like in real time art direct this and see like, okay, where does the shadow go? Actually, I changed the settings here. I should change them back to get a nicer result. I totally forgot about that. Now we have softer shadows, which is great. Let me Shift D this tree and hope my machine doesn't blow up. Let me move around. So if you hit G and then Shift Z, you can move the tree in every direction on the Z plane, except for the Z plane. Sorry. So you can move it in X and Y. If you press G and then Z, you can only move it up and down, which is also great. So you see, you can add these trees in here, and we're already getting like nice spotty light. We also want to, what I want to do is basically I want to introduce some spotted light here. Like you have the kind of light you have that comes through the leaves, and I don't necessarily want to put a tree up here just to get that effect, because it's going to be very heavy on the performance. So what I want to do is something else. Just move this tree a little bit here, kind of a bit nicer here maybe. Or you can take like bushier trees, or it depends, right? If you want to block out everything here, then you can really play around with that. Let me actually, for now, let's get rid of these trees because they're quite heavy. I want to focus on the foreground and how we can get some like spotty, leafy sunlight coming through. And for that, I need to figure out, okay, which is the guy that actually influences the shadow in the foreground. So I think it's this guy. I'm gonna try to move it. You can see, okay, this is the guy that causes that. There's also the other one. Does that really matter? What if I get rid of it? Yeah, so I want to extend this guy a little bit just to make sure I'm well covered. Yeah, okay. And now I will give this guy a new material, and let's say new. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a noise texture, and plug that one into the alpha. And I can also plug it into the base color so I can see kind of what I'm doing. This guy needs, with Control T, coordinates generated is fine. And then I can play with the scale here. I probably want to actually give it box mapping. Yeah, I think that's better. And then with the scale, I can control that. Now I want to give it a color ramp to play with the contrast of it. I mean, you all probably can see where this is going. And now I want to set my material to alpha clip. And now you can see there's like almost like a camouflage pattern. There's holes in there. And I also need to set the shadow mode to alpha clip. And now, if you go down here, we have kind of this light coming through the trees, like it looks like. And then we can change the scale of it to get more smaller ones. Becomes quite noisy, but you can see how it, well, it really kind of looks like it. We can have smaller, bigger ones. That is totally up to you. You can art direct the shit out of that. Exactly how you want to have it. You can have like a harsher mix. You see, that's kind of nice. You just want to have some dappled sunlight here and there. You don't want to have too much of it. But this really, I think this works rather well. So now we have that in the foreground. Let's get to work a little bit on the background thing. So for the purpose of this kit bash here in the background, I prepared a little file. It's basically something from an older project of mine I did years ago, and I just prepped a little bit the parts so I can import them more easily here for you to see. Let's go to append, and I go to my files here. I go inside the blend file, go to objects, and I'll use all of these and bring them in. I use them for like a sci-fi temple kind of scene. Some of the images I posted recently are from there. But I thought I can repurpose them for this. Usually when I import stuff, I want to keep it all selected and then hit M, make a new collection and call it, I don't know, import or whatever. Otherwise the files will just like fly around and I can't find them anymore. So I have like a couple of like pillars here, which I want to use. Those will be useful. I probably have to make them a lot smaller. So those I can use instead of the pillars that I have here. Get rid of those. So the point I'm trying to make here is that it's always a good idea to go through your older projects and just see what you have lying around, even if it's not directly related to what you're doing right now. There's a high chance, I think, that something you've done before can in some way be repurposed for this new way. So I'm just going to use the material I made for the wall and apply it to the pillar here, and then I'll see whatever else I have here I can repurpose. I think what would be cool is I'm going to use these like this way. Let's see, even a bit smaller. This could be like a good way to make an entrance here. Get it in the middle. Get down. I think I should set the origin to geometry, meaning that it will center it. So this makes actually a very interesting how do I say, contrast to whatever else I've built here. I can move this a bit inside so I can get like an interesting contrast here. I'll make sure the material is applied. And then you can even like just like Shift D, scale it up. And very quickly you get something interesting going here. Let's see what else we can do. This thing was some high-techy computer shit I wanted to build, but maybe we can just use it as like some like, I don't know, chandelier inside. It has like a metal-y kind of material, and we can maybe just like barely see it. We can fake it a bit so we can definitely see it in our shot. Even though it's not like centered or anything, we can still like have this like gleaming in the background. See what else can we do with this. Maybe move it up a little bit. Interesting. Or maybe we just stretch it a bit so it becomes a bit more fitting for this. Doesn't have to be the same kind of aspect ratio as before. We still have lots of cool parts here. Where did my other pillar go? Oh, there's in the background. Okay. Maybe there can be like a pillar. Would that be visible? Let's check. Yeah, there would be like a pillar maybe visible here. Let's make it smaller. So you have like, let's make an array quickly. Not upwards. Okay, I think I need to reset rotation and scale. A bit further apart. Let's see how many are visible. You see, we have like a semblance of an interior in the back. Then we have these guys in front. So we can also make those into an array. It makes it easier to, I think, are they reset? Yeah. That makes it easier to deal with them. So maybe I want to have these more in front, so it creates like a bit of a gap in here. Let's make another array of these two. Push them. Where did they go? So it's kind of symmetrical. Maybe that tattoo. I need to be a bit bigger. So just make sure I get these right here. Okay. I can actually change into Eevee. I should change into Eevee to see what's happening here. Let's to load some textures again. Oh, a lot of them. Okay. Let's just give it a short second. It needs to load the stuff from the network drive again. At some point I need to get rid of this lady here. She is not helping the situation at all. I need to make sure I reset all the rotation and scale. This one I really want to make it into like a metal. Let's make it like orangey. And very metallic. Yeah, nice. So that kind of already brings us into a better position. Let's really add a let's add a knight. I also purchased a knight conveniently. Where is he lying around? I organized it already. There he is. need to check if he's also in a... Yeah, okay, he's already in the collection. That's very good. He's a bit on the large side. A bit on the large side here, this guy. He needs to be a bit smaller. And maybe I want to... I don't want the shield or the flag. He is supposed to be our good old stick man. Let's make this thing a bit shorter. Stick shouldn't be so big. Let's make it a bit thinner as well. That makes more sense. So I can get rid of the lady. I don't need her anymore. This is a bit... Lift this up a bit. So he looks like more like he's standing on there. Okay. Let's change that again. Get rid of this. Okay. Let's have a look at how this looks. Oh, okay, now okay. This looks a lot better. Probably want to... I'll go over it in the lighting section when we add some lights. So you can kind of see how I built this scene out. You can see a bit in the background. That's not good. No, I need to kind of like find something to block this out. Let's add this. Let's add our wall material. You can paint over this where these kind of gaps are a bit too obvious, but that's okay. So this guy is standing here. You want to move him a little bit. I don't know. We need to really feel out for the composition where he could be best, so it doesn't have any tangents, any inconvenient overlaps, or stuff like that. You know, he gets hit by some light, which is great. Maybe we can add some different flavor into this material. I made another map with some different textures. I painted myself together out of some pieces. Let's see how that works. Or maybe we want to mix that together. This looks a bit overly messy. But maybe we can create some sort of mix out of these two. Let's see if we just mix these two together, what happens. So this is based on a multiply. What happens if you just plainly mix it? Well, we get a bit more noisiness in there. What happens if we feed this into the factor, color ramp it? So basically we're creating a different kind of blending mode here. Let's use a different texture for that as well, for how we are mixing these textures together. So basically, right now I'm feeding these two textures together, mixing them up with an overlay mode and feeding them into the base color. With the factor here, I can determine how they are mixed. So I can bring in a texture, a different texture, and use the black and white values in that texture to drive how these textures are mixed. So this is like a really dirty kind of texture. I probably want to give it a different kind of scaling, a different kind of size, so I can control that independently. And now I can like control how this is driven. Maybe let's get it back to a mix. Yeah, so you can see where the concrete texture shines through and where the other texture shines through. Let's see if we have something slightly more useful. These are just random textures I use all the time. Maybe this is cool. I'm just looking for high contrast. I think this one needs to be a bit more on the, I want to feed in the browner value. And I think this one also needs something warmer. Okay. To see how we can mix that best. How it needs to be subtle and not too strong, not too saturated. So I can move it around a bit. This looks pretty cool. Could probably be refined. It's a bit noisy in some areas here. Let me see if I can amp up the sun a bit more to get a bit more contrast in there. Here's my sun. Let's pump it up to like 5 here to get more contrast in there. And so I can spend a lot of time building this out more and more and more and more. But you would probably get the idea. You probably have gotten the idea on how this is done. And so I want to focus a bit more on the lighting and how we can improve the lighting and how we get it a bit more atmospheric. And I'll do that now. As for the exercise, I'd recommend you finish building out your scene, the one you've chosen. If you have made multiple sketches, use paid free self-made parts and tools to make your life easier. Focus on the primary design goal the most, and add pieces that help you achieve your goal in your set time frame. Make sure you go through older projects so you kind of know what you have and what could be repurposed or reused. Even if it's like, even if you're building a medieval scene and you have like sci-fi parts running around, as long as it's not like obviously like the shapes are not like obviously crazy sci-fi, and they could be reused. Like architectural parts can be reused or whatever. You should check around and see how you can quickly reuse them to build something new out of it. So when we're getting closer to lighting and also the shot design of what we're trying to do, it's good to get back to this guy called photographer And like I showed you before, we have two cameras here. This one is actually here, and you can see like how our scene now falls apart or not. You can see here we have an interesting piece of architecture actually. It looks very temple-ish. It looks kind of strange. We can't really place it into any particular kind of period, I think, because it's completely made up. But I think it's interesting enough and familiar enough so that people can kind of get an idea of what this place could be and the kind of associations it recalls in our brain. So I wanted to, because I always do multiple shots, I don't only do like one shot. I wanted to just like quickly show you how I approach that. I think a more detailed breakdown of the whole camera system and everything, and of course getting familiar with what all these camera terms mean is quite an extensive topic, because we have to dive into cameras and real world stuff to actually completely fully understand what the virtual camera here is trying to achieve. But for our purposes here, I want to just focus on a few things quickly. So, I mean, here we have our camera, our master shot that we kind of agreed upon, which has a 50 millimeter focal length, which basically determines how much of the scene we see. Generally speaking, 35 or 50 is kind of the range of a normal lens, what our eyes, how we perceive the world, more or less. And that's usually considered pretty neutral. We can change that. If we go down with the value to, let's say, 20, we're going to get a very wide angle kind of look. Let me do that with the other camera so I'm not losing that shot. Here we already have 20. So it's if you put the camera in the same position, we're getting a way more distorted view of the world. Distorted meaning that the objects closer to us will appear like a lot larger than something that's further away from us. So if we have like the camera here, which is kind of similar to where we have it here, you can see here in the bottom where we have these stones, and here we also have these stones, but if you compare it, this is really a lot more distorted. This takes up so much more space. And if we add another one, we add another camera here, let's change this to, let's say, something more zoomed in, more telephoto, let's say 85. And we're choosing the same kind of framing again with the stones as our anchor point. You can see that now we have these three shots, and they're kind of aimed in the general area, but they show us very different kind of things. So again, without going into like crazy amount of detail of this, how when to use what, is that for like a general standard shot, I would always go with like 35 and 50. In fact, a lot of directors will ask you, if you design for a movie, that you design assets and present them with like a 35 millimeter lens, because it's kind of like the standard, and they want to make sure that the design looks good with that lens. And then if it looks good in that lens, it will also look good when it's like in a telephoto or wide angle. So let's look at our shot in a wide angle lens, which distorts everything. It shows a lot more. It's very good lens for a very good lens for like establishing shots and showing like a vista, or like a lot of, where we can squeeze in a lot of information, right? So I can put like a lot more trees in here, and I can show more of the environment, but there's less focus on the guy and his approach to this thing, right? Which is kind of what our primary design task is. But it's good if you want to show more of this building here, and more of the surrounding, more of the forest. This can be a good lens. And in opposite to that, here we have the camera positioned at the same location, aimed at the same stuff, but it shows a lot less. It's a lot more focused. That's why telephoto lens is used a lot for like focusing on characters and focusing on specific items. So if we want to have like, I don't know, another character here, or we want to show a particular detail of this guy, then this lens is a lot better. So I wouldn't actually use this lens like this in this shot because it's too restrictive. It doesn't show enough. I would use this shot if I want to like focus on the entrance. I mean, there's nothing behind it right now. I should actually put something there. But if I want to focus on the entrance and like zoom out a bit and then have people really be focused on this thing, and move this out of the way, focused on the entrance, then that would work a lot better. Or I want to show something about this guy, right? I want to like really focus on him, and then maybe I want to like not only do that, but also have a stronger depth of field. So the good thing about photographer, it enables autofocus and also autofocus tracking. So I can click on that, and it's going to put like a marker here, and it's always going to focus the camera on this guy, which is really cool. That's a feature of the photographer. So the thing is, with the different focal length, there also comes an expectations of how the camera works and how we see the world, how we're used to see the world through the lens. So usually when you have a wide angle lens, you have pretty much everything in focus. And the expectation would also be that you have, with a shot like this, that everything is really very much in focus, except for maybe very close-up elements. And I mean, with an establishing shot, you want to have as much in focus as possible. You want it to be as clear as possible so people can see people can recognize what they're looking at. So I would recommend to do that as well, to mimic that and to not make like crazy depth of field in all your shots, regardless of lens. We kind of have to here, without having the restrictions of the real world, we have to mimic the real world to make our shots believable and fitting for a movie or game project. So associated with a telephoto lens is also a shallower depth of field, a shallower amount of stuff in focus. So we want to mimic that as well. And you don't want to go too crazy. Usually like a 2.8, f2.8, which kind of tells you how much light is let in, is a good cornerstone. There's still enough, it's still enough in focus so that you kind of get an idea of the surrounding, but it's not too blurry. If it's like f0.95, it becomes really, really blurry, and you're losing, you can't really recognize anymore what's in the back, and it's just too shallow. But with f2.8, the object is still isolated enough, and that's what you want with depth of field. You want to isolate your focus object. So right now, it's not really about the entrance anymore. It's about this guy. And where he is, right? I mean, there's nothing else in the back here, and he doesn't have any hands really, so that's kind of a bit problematic. But you can kind of see how from this angle here it still really works, right? We're still telling a story about him approaching here, but we have a bit more like focus on him. This could be like a different kind of shot, right? And of course, since we're in 3D, now this is really completely possible without any additional work from our side, which is fantastic, and saves us a lot of time compared to like painting just this one image. So even though we built this scene with the main master shot in mind, there is still a lot of possibility to quickly take this, scale it up, copy it over, make more columns, add more trees in a quite a quick manner to build more shots out of this. But of course we have here our master shot, and this is just a little detour on the cameras. So now let's get to the lighting. We already have used an HDRI. We have our sun setting. We have amped up the sun, which is great. I want to add some fogging in here. And we can do that in two ways. We can, on the one hand, add a cube. And we want to make sure that this cube encompasses most of our scene. And you guys already know what happens. One thing I wanted to do is add something here in the back so that's closed off, that in case I want to change my layout, I quickly can and look through here. Okay, that should be fine. I just want to make sure that when I look through, it's all dark here. And I also wanted to add a light. I'm going to use an area light, scale it up, and put it just like above the entrance here. So the main reason for that is, I can't see it anymore. I want to get a bit of contrast in the opening here, so that there's like it's a dark entrance, but I want to get a bit of like light in there. Let me quickly get rid of that. I want to get a bit of light in there, so that we have like, it's maybe a bit too much. Let's leave it at 100. So that there's kind of, like, oh, you have to go there. There's like contrast here. There's something worth looking at here, right? And it also helps to like play around a little bit with the chandelier, whatever thing it is, to reflect the metal, the light, and everything. Let me get back to my box, because you all know what's coming. So rotation and scale, we say new, we call it fog material. And what happened? Here it went. And we're going to give it a volume, a principled volume. Plug that into the volume and make it a lot less dense. What happened? What did I do? And we have a lot of fog. We don't want so much fog. We want a lot less fog. And we probably, to go with the scene, we want to make it maybe a bit warm. Yeah. So, and now you can see that our light is already interacting with the fog, which gives us very nice, like, God rays almost. How you achieve God rays is then a mixture of intensity of light and the strength of your fog. But I wanted to show you a different way of making this kind of fog, which is new in 2.83. And finally, there is support for something called VDB files, volume files. It's an open standard, I believe. So if you're in 2.83, you have this volume thing here, and you can say import VDB. And I want to do that. And let me see where my volumes are. I have a lot of purchased volumes. And I'll choose one and see how it goes. And where did it go? So I have a volume here. I just need to find it now. And here I have a little cloud. So depending on, there are free ones to download, which you can find online. And then there are a lot of fantastic paid ones. You can make your own. I'm too lazy to do that. Of course, this one looks like a cloud, but we can easily make that into something more useful, like dust, like stuff on the ground, right? And it looks decent in Eevee. It looks really good in cycles, but I wanna stay in the real time realm here. So I have this now. It looks still shit, but we can also give this a material, and automatically it will assign a principled volume to it, which is great. So now we can have more control over that as well. We can play with the density and with the color of it, and with a lot of other things. We can play with the emission. It has temperature, lots of different things. You can make explosions, and a lot of them that you can find for download are also animated. So there's lots of great stuff you can do with these, or you can just simply use them as like a ground plane kind of foggy kind of thing. So if you move them closer to the camera, we can have like overall kind of mistiness. And so you see we have focused like stuff on the ground and not so much in the top, which helps a lot create something more realistic in terms of fog, instead of just having like fog all over the scene. So this can be very nice for added realism. What else we can do? I feel like I still want to have some more contrast in the scene. So if I make my HDRI a bit darker, it's maybe a bit too dark. I mean, of course, you can set this up in, you can do that in your final color grade, in Photoshop, in Lightroom, whatever you use. But I don't know, I feel like that actually would maybe make more sense, especially when you render out 16-bit images, and then you would preserve more of the quality. But I feel like I want to get a certain amount of stuff done in camera here, because it kind of gives me different ideas, and it makes me go in different design directions sometimes. Instead of just doing the same thing, going through the same motions again of like, okay, I have to make it flat and then do this and then do that. Maybe it makes me discover like different kind of things when I have more of what my final image looks like already in 3D. So now the cool thing is that we can still use our sun and still dial in things, right? This is not like a static image. This is completely real time. So this is really cool. Now we have something very different looking, but it still works, right? So we have the night in the light, and the castle, the temple a bit more in the darkness, but it's offset by the light inside the our temple. And we can even, like, you can even pump this up a bit more to generate more contrast. So it creates even more like a focal point, which is cool. And then you can build out the interior, and then you go crazy and never finish anything. So we have this, and it's a bit distracting that you have this part here in the light. That's something we probably want to fix. But this is just to show that we have a fully interactive scene here. And you can go as crazy as you want. You can even animate this, right? Very easily. So let's go back to the scene we currently have. And it's kind of getting there. So we have our HDRI setup, we have our fog, we have cool lighting, we have our dappled sunlight, and now we can actually get into just simply rendering this thing. of course, you can add more stuff to it, add more little things, refine it, right? Refine maybe the temple you have built. So many more things that you can spend more time on. There's also something that sometimes has a great effect, which is the irradiance volume. And I can quickly show you how to set it up. And however, I can't say that it always has massively different, like it not always massively improves your scene. So for that, you have this indirect lighting here under the render settings. But before that, you need to basically add a new object here, and it's under light probe, and it's called irradiance volume. You want to do it in a way that it's encompassing your scene. So you just scale it and bring it up like you would with anything. And these dots are basically areas where it's going to compute kind of like the indirect lighting, the bounce lights. It's going to give you more accurate and nicer looking lighting. You can change here in this little field, you can change the resolution of it. So if you want better results, you can change everything to 8, but of course, or 6 or 7 or whatever you want. But of course you have to know that it will take longer to compute this, depending on how many points it needs to compute. So you have this here, then you go back to the render settings and you say bake indirect lighting. And then it will compute, and it will, depending on the scene and depending on how much shit is going on there, is going to take quite a while. And that of course brings us away from the whole real-time interaction with this. But if you're ready to go for the final render, this sometimes has good results, and sometimes not. It's kind of, I feel like, a bit scene dependent. If the increase in quality and light and everything is really of that much of a difference that it justifies sitting there for an extended amount of time. It can be from a few minutes to like an hour or so, depending on it. And then after that, it's kind of baked. The lighting is baked for this lighting scenario. So once you start changing things again, once you start changing the light, you have to basically delete your cache and bake it again. If you up the diffuse bounces, you can get better results, but of course it takes longer. So these are all things you can consider doing to increase your quality of your Eevee renders. But I mean, it already looks pretty damn good, and I'd honestly rather have preserved the real-time aspect of it, rather than I mean, sometimes it's better to have that final bit of quality, of course, but it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. So you have to think if, like, okay, this difference in the bounce lights and everything is something that I really want in my final render, or maybe I can just add it in Photoshop, since that is still our final hand-in 2D image for the client. But of course, if the client wants to have like an animation, a little like I don't know, you want to animate the lights, you want to animate the camera, then of course the light baking can be of huge benefit. So we have all this set up in our camera, everything. We want to render it out. You know how it goes. We want to activate the mist here. You want to set the resolution to whatever setting you want to have. And then the passes I always recommend, and I've done this a couple of times, there's videos out there, but of course I'll go through it again, is that you want to have this one as the main render pass, hit F12, render it out, save it. What I also would recommend, now that is possible, here you click on the render pass and you go to mist. Like I mentioned before, we have this now, it's fantastic. You can go to the world settings, And here's the mist pass. And as usual, if this mist pass is not there, it's because you haven't clicked in the render passes on mist. And now we can get this adjustment here. So what you want is that you have a nice distribution, that everything is visible from, that basically the white point is at the object that is furthest away in your scene, and the black point is at the closest place of the scene. And you have to adjust it because it depends on every scene, it's different. But once you have this, you hit again F12 and you render it out, or you can say here, viewport render image. Actually, sorry, you actually need to press viewport render image to get this thing here. And that can be used in the compositing workflow I'm going to go through in a second, which of course is the same as I usually do. So we have this, which is great. And you can always go back to combined. And then we go here back to our standard view. We have this, I think we have the fog thing blocking everything, the fog volume. So we want to get rid of that. Just for this little purpose here of saying, clicking on the little arrow again, saying flat, random, get rid of the outline, get rid of the viewport overlays, get rid of the VDB. And then you can say viewport render image, and you get an object ID pass, meaning that every object has a different ID. You can save it out, and these are basically all the passes I use. There's more available now on Eevee, which is great, but I'll get into that at some other time. And I don't usually use them for my Photoshop workflow. And then you can always go back, Studio, Material, Outline, Overlay, and add your things again, and then you're good to go. So that concludes the part about Blender. And we'll jump to the exercise. So exercise number 4, the camera thing is tricky, and it takes a lot of time to learn it properly and to learn the different focal lengths and everything. So the more you do, the better. And the more shitty ones you do, the more better ones you will produce later on. So I'd recommend you to do at least 12 different shots playing around with different focal lengths and camera positions, and see how you can actually, out of a simple setup, get lots and lots of different looking shots, right? Some will look fairly different, some will look quite similar, which is fine, but try to get 12 distinct ones. And then evaluate their strengths and choose maybe 4 to 6 that you really want to bring to finish in Photoshop. I always do more than what I show here. I do a lot more, and usually weed out the shitty ones. Just like as any photographer takes thousands of pictures in order just to show a few dozen chosen ones, because not everything is going to be good. What you can also do is, since everything is real time, everything is movable, experiment with character positioning and see how it affects the storytelling. Maybe add more characters, add different characters. Maybe you have more knights. Maybe you do a different scene and you have more characters, and position them. And maybe you can even build a little story out of the different camera angles. So you have like a wide shot in the beginning of the castle. Then you have like one where the guy is a bit closer, kind of similar to our master shot. And then maybe you'll have him like go up the stairs, go inside, and then focus on the entrance or focus on him. So you can actually build yourself a little story out of this little set that we built. Now we're in Photoshop, and you can see the kind of scene I chose. Of course, I prepared this scene in advance, and now that I'm going through the process again of building this scene, you can see that I've made some different choices in the new version. The new version, actually, I like the texture I made a lot more, and maybe the all-over lighting is a bit improved as well. This one seems now a bit dark to me, but that's how it goes, right? I'm trying to figure out the best scene to do for this tutorial, and then of course also try to rebuild it in a very streamlined, focused way, so that you get the most out of it. So I've built the scene the same way that we've just gone through. So you can now recognize all these pieces here. The grass I've scattered, the assets from Quixel, the trees that I've used. Here I've used just a different, I think a different model of tree that was a bit bushier, a bit thicker, but you can see how also the light comes through here. Through the block we built with our noise generated. Here the night, the pieces, the entrance here, and of course I've built a few shots out, just like I told you. And now I need to improve this image a little bit, of course, since some of the areas, some of these are not that like readable. Excuse me. And with that, I mean, like, you can see how this tree stump here is kind of disappearing against the background. And also this rock here is not that fantastically readable. The night could be a bit clearer. But we'll get to that quickly. I mean, this tutorial is mainly about the real-time 3D production workflow, and not necessarily a Photoshop paint over tutorial. So we have this newly generated mist pass that we couldn't get before Blender 2.83. Usually what I do is I set this guy to soft light, and then I get it down to like 30%. Turning it on and off lets you see that right off the bat we're getting better readability here, for example. So that means the objects in the foreground are getting a bit darker, the objects in the background are getting a bit brighter. It's a good start already. I also have the ID pass here. It shows up very desaturated when you bring it, when you save it, when you bring it into Photoshop. I just do a simple levels adjustment. Use these sliders to like make a more contrasty image, which makes it just easier for the magic wand to select these items. Let's see. I'm just gonna go quickly through this because again, this is not really like a Photoshop tutorial, but I just want to show you how I composite these together to arrive at the final result. So you can see here, turning it on and off, you can immediately see what I did is basically I went into the object ID pass, used the magic wand with W, and turn on contiguous, play with the tolerance, and then select these items here. And then invert the selection, Control-Shift-I, and paint behind it with a brush or the gradient tool. And it's the main purpose is to separate this and to amplify the dust on the ground. And also get rid of some of the, you see here, this one from the VDB is too straight and it doesn't look nice. So I made it a bit more like dusty, cloudy, and brought less attention to the edges of the building and more attention to the main area. Here I basically took a tree from a masked tree photo, and you can see what it looks like. So this is how it looks like from the masked tree photo. Masked photos are the best thing ever. So you can buy some of them like photobash.org. They save so much time. So I overlay that here. And then I play with the blend if sliders and move these here. You know all how this works, right? With Alt key, you can split these up and blend them accordingly to the below layer or the layer itself. Basic stuff. So we have that here. So I can bring in some variety of different kind of leaves and trees, so it all doesn't look so strangely 3D generated. I'm also using foreground areas. Again, foreground trees here, also very, very good to just get different kinds of more natural looking leaves in there to destroy the 3D-ness of it. It still could have done a better job, I think, but this one will help and will help us stay within our time frame. I added little bits of like grass here, you can see. Basically what I want to do is some of the areas look too clean, turning on, turning off. So I want to destroy these clean edges, basically. This is already a lot better than most 3D assets, but there still can be more done to get this to look more natural, more random. I added some rocks also from a masked photo pack. And here as well, I added some shadow on top of it to make it fit in more naturally, and color corrected it with the color balance, Control B, to have it a bit warmer and fit in our scenario here. So again, masked grass and weeds, these speed up your workflow so much, so I'd highly recommend using them. Here I have a few as well, you can see. These are lifesavers and are so fast. Instead of painting grass, you can just pop these in. This one is, I used the texture I showed you before, just kind of like as a, not only as a texture, but also as an overlay in Photoshop. If I disable the layer mask and change the blending, you can see what that looks like. So you see, it's like this texture here I put on top and hiding it in most places and enabling a layer mask to just have it appear wherever I want it to appear. Now that I see it, it kind of doesn't look so nice anymore. I think the shader I built in the newer version looks a lot nicer, but you know, that's life. I tried to just destroy some of the edges. You can see here I just cracked some edges and some stuff that was just I didn't want to do in 3D, or now I realize is too clean. You've seen me turn the light on with an area light in Blender in the new version, and now I'm just replicating the same thing in Photoshop because I didn't have the foresight to do that before. But again, you do one, it's okay. You do two, then you learn something from it, right? So that's why I always recommend do more. So I did the same process for all of these scenes. So you can see here, I took like a different shot I designed for this, which basically just rotated the camera a little bit to the other side, and I think it's an 85mm lens, which creates a lot flatter image, less perspective, less depth perspective, but still interesting shot because we get to see like kind of like further inside. This is like a wide angle shot. So 20mm lens, I think you can see how I had to add more trees and I had to extend this building, whatever it is, upwards and to the sides to have it basically cover the full frame. You can see how it's very different. I also experimented with the positioning. I put this guy a lot further back and closer towards the camera because otherwise he would have just stood here and totally get lost. And here we have like a full frontal kind of symmetric shot with I think also a 50mm lens, and so we're getting really close to the grass, which is great, but we're getting a really cool look on the intricacies of this built temple thingy, whatever it is, and we can also look a bit inside. I moved the sky. Again, we can see how kind of like a little story comes together. Similar shot, wider angle lens, same thing. And here I'm really zooming in. That's again the 85 millimeter. Like I told you, focuses more on the details and can be used for great storytelling. And then another shot here of the guy being really close up of the guy. And yeah, so we have all these shots. What I didn't do is the color grading. If you saw some of my earlier tutorials, and you know that I used to use Photoshop for that, but I've kind of switched to Lightroom. So I don't do any grading in this step. I just do the adjustments I need to do for that I just showed you, the grass and everything. And then as a last step, I bring it into Lightroom, which we will just do now very quickly. I did a more in-depth look at Lightroom before in my last tutorial, cinematic set design. So I just want to give you the basics here. So Lightroom comes with a lot of, it comes I think with every Photoshop subscription. So if you have Photoshop, you're also eligible to get Lightroom, which is great. And it's a photo grading and photo manipulation tool for photographers, but that since we're striving for photographic looking stuff, it's actually more than suited to what we're doing. So there's two versions. I use Lightroom Classic, which is the offline version, and there's Lightroom, which is the online version, which works more with like cloud-based image workflows. But for us, Classic is fine. It looks a bit more dated. It's a bit older, but I think in terms of functionality, it's pretty much the same. So there's all sorts of stuff going on here, but basically I'm in library view, and there are collections. You should make a new collection, click on the plus, say create collection. That's the only thing you should do right now. And then you go into file, import photos and video. And then you get to select a source, and then you navigate to your stuff. So we go wherever we need to go, and then you click on wherever. So you have your files here, you have them selected. There's a check mark. If you have more files than what you want to select, you say uncheck all, and you just click on the ones you really want to import. And on the right side here, you say add to collection, and you select the collection that is the one you want. So now that we imported our photos, we are in our collection. We want to switch from library to develop mode. We select the first photo in our batch, and we want to make some adjustments. So we don't need most of that. We don't need like red eye removal, transform, or whatever. We've done that in Photoshop. We want to focus on the color correction thing, the coloring options. So I don't usually use everything. I just focus on a few. And one of them is the temperature and tint slider. So you can change color temperature from cool to warm. You can change your tint. It's basically mostly there to fix wrong white balance, but it can be also used just to color the image more interestingly. You have exposure, just to change the overall exposure. And we have also individual amounts of changes here to highlights only or to shadows only. So they can be very useful to make slight adjustments to when some areas are too dark, some areas are too bright. I also use the presence here. It's texture, clarity and haze, dehaze. It's basically there to more advanced contrast control sliders that also have sharpening. So you can make more minute adjustments and more advanced adjustments than using like the sharpness filter or contrast filter or whatever in Photoshop. So these will help with that, make interesting results. But you see how if it's overused, it creates like an overly contrasty image, which might not be so nice. You want to always have a balance. Another thing I use a lot is the split toning. basically hue and saturation sliders for highlights and shadows and a mixer in between them. So you can say like, oh, I want to have very green highlights and very warm shadows, creates like a very vintagey kind of look. You can slide in between them to have it more green or more brown. There are certain circumstances where this is definitely very, very useful, and it can really push your color grades in very different and experimental directions for you to find exactly the grade you like. But of course, as usual, don't overdo it, right? This is one thing we should ignore, the sharpening and noise reduction, because the one thing we get from Eevee is a very sharp and noise-free image. So we actually want to go back to the effects panel and actually introduce some of that. So you can introduce vignetting to make the edges a bit darker. Ignore the vignetting in the lens corrections because we actually don't have a lens. So you want to actually do it in the effects panel. So you can see how we have a vignetting, a darkening of the edges. We want to, I always add some grain, and it has very fine grain controls. You see, completely without it, it's kind of like, well, it's okay, it's clean. But then if you add like a little bit, it's quite nice. And then if you add a lot of it, then yeah, well, it's very grainy. So you can not only change the amount, you can also change the size of it to really destroy it, the roughness, meaning like how contrasty it is. So lots of things you can do with the grain to really find that grain that you like. But as with anything, don't overdo it. And these are the main things I just use. I can do it with Photoshop, sure, but it will take me a lot longer. And the tools here are a lot more tuned and give you finer control than what Photoshop can give you. So that makes it more usable. So also you maybe noticed here that I actually exported a TIFF out of the PSD file to keep the quality as good as possible for as long as possible. And then I also export a TIFF out of here. So once you've done it for one image, you can just click on the next image in line, right click, say develop settings, paste settings from previous. Or you can, if you have more images to process, you say develop settings, copy settings, and then you select all of them, develop settings, and then paste, and it will give you a pop-up and ask you what to copy. So you can process all these images at the same time. Of course, not every image is the same, so you will have to do slight adjustments to that specific image, but it is a lot faster than having to do it again and again and again. So that's just another pointer. So we have the TIFF, you want to export it, you say export, you select the images you want, you export it, and you do your settings. You can export a TIFF again, which is what I would recommend. And then you can just go back to Photoshop to add whatever, I don't know, text you want to have, you want to put your name on it or whatever. And that's pretty much it. But this is pretty much the final image that I would produce in here. And yeah, that's about it. So I hope this was all useful. We've come to the end of it. I hope this all made sense to you. Some of the more basic things you can check on my YouTube channel, where I'm continuously going to upload videos that show some of the more basic things or things I do a lot and repeat a lot for you, so that you can just check it there for free, and I can focus on the tutorials on showing you more different kind of things. So again, thanks for the support, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. For the last exercise, finish the images you chose in whatever 2D application you choose. There can be Photoshop, Lightroom, Affinity, Photo, whatever you feel like. And if you want to practice the whole color grading thing, I think it would be cool to explore a couple of different grades instead of just settling on one. So try to get maybe 3 different kinds of moods just purely with the color grade, and then once you save them out, you can compare them to each other and choose the one that feels like emphasizes the scene the best.